I get called an artist and a curator, and I generally make work that puts the visitor at the heart of the experience. It's very participatory work, and it quite often tackles social or environmental issues through its process. I'd like to sort of come clean from the off that I don't have the solution to feeding the world, but I do believe that artists have got a role in the sort of questions that we're asking here tonight. And I think that we're living in a time of unprecedented environmental challenge or crisis, and that the problem is partly how we're thinking about this issue. And I think the problem's a cultural one. I echo what Karen was saying earlier. And therefore, a cultural shift has to be part of that solution. And I think that's where we as artists can come in, or designers can come in and respond imaginatively to this set of problems. We can begin to influence cultural change and to address value systems and reassess notions of progress and justice and empower people ultimately to take action. I think we can do this in a range of ways. We can tell stories, we can ask questions, we can provoke debate, we can come up with new arresting visual ways to look at something, look at a problem, or imaginative solutions to a problem that exists. But I think another important thing that we can do is to create spaces for conversation, and that's something that I try to do within my work. And someone told me something, a little thing yesterday that I thought was quite interesting, that was an imaginary scenario that if I've got €1 and you've got €1, and we both give each other our euros, then we both end up with €1. Whereas if I've got an idea and you've got an idea and we have a conversation, then we both at least go away with 2 ideas, if not a third shared idea. And that is something that I sort of try to explore in the work that I do. I'm going to show you some images from a few projects that I've been involved in. Not because I'm desperate to show you all my work, but more that I think it is a model. It's trying to be a model of some of the things that I'm talking about. I do a lot of work, a lot of my work recently has been around food. And I think this is because it brings together a whole range of things that I'm interested in. I love food, and I'm really interested in food and the culture of food and cooking and sharing that food and growing and bringing people together and creating contemporary celebrations around the growing cycle. But it also brings together, I used to be an environmental campaigner, and then I worked as an artist in residence for Friends of the Earth, so I've always had a great environmental interest, and I run a whole range of different participatory interactive arts projects. I used to run something called the Museum of on the South Bank that brought people together to explore what a contemporary museum might look like. The work's also really collaborative. It brings together people from different disciplines, and it's also about the conversations that those people have within the process and the new ways of working that come out of those people meeting one another and creating a piece together. So the first piece of work I'm going to talk about is called Feast, and it's a project that was commissioned by the London International Festival of Theatre in 2004, and it took place on an allotment in South London. And it brought together a team of 5 artists, a gardener, a chef, a primary school, an allotment association, and a wider community of people who lived in that area. It was also the first project that I've done a lot of community arts projects, but it was the first project I did within my own community. And I think that made it a more powerful experience for me, and the legacy of it has then become a greater thing, I think. The aims behind the project were many. And they were looking at growing food in an urban context. They were looking at the relationship between producer and consumer, at healthy eating, at food miles, at seasonal food, organic growing, at creating contemporary celebrations, and ultimately to create a new community that come together to do this thing. But we didn't go into school saying, this is what we're doing, these are the things that we're going to be looking at. I think what I'm sort of really trying to say is that the process of the work is the thing that brings all these things up, and it's by doing it that you learn and explore some of these issues. So this is the allotment, and we got it in the heart of winter, and we had a launch. And we involved as many people as possible in the launch, and we had tours of the allotment, and we had singing on the allotment, and it was all torch lit, and the school lollipop lady showed people across the road to the tour. So we began to try and involve everybody. And then a group of mixed-age children came together every week for a year to explore the project and to take part. And the idea was that they were going to grow and harvest and cook and serve a meal for 400 people outside on an allotment, and that they were going to explore a whole range of issues through that process, but that everything that they did would be towards this final culmination in a feast. So they interviewed allotment holders and asked, it was a bit like a sort of oral history project. They were asking them what they grew and why they grew what they grew, and looking at the history of the allotment and the multitude of people that met. I think they're incredible places, allotments, because they bring together all ages, all classes, all ethnicities, and they're a group of people who share skills, share knowledge, and have a generosity of spirit that I haven't come across before. And so the children interviewed the allotment holders, and then they came back and they decided what it was that they were going to grow. And we had a massive vegetable tasting, which I wasn't having high hopes for, but it really was, can I have some more beetroot, please? So it really was successful. And then they decided what they were going to grow. And we had a series of digging days, and we invited community members to come and help us, parents and so on, to come and help us prepare the ground to grow. And then we began to plant. And then something sort of magical happened, I think. I'd been working in campaigning organisations and in theatre and in TV, and everything was very urgent, and we've got to do it now. And this project was about sort of slowing that down a bit, and suddenly it was nature's time that was in control, and it was the arc of the sun rising and setting and the seasons that was going to dictate how long this project took, and the bean was going to take that long to grow. And so conversations began to happen, and children who were normally in school were out on an allotment and talking to each other in completely different ways than they had been within. I mean, the teachers remarked on it. They just said, this is absolutely extraordinary. There's a real change taking place in the way that people talk to one another. And for me, that was one of the most magical things that happened, actually. This is the first event. We had the structure of the project was that we had seasonal artists in residence, and that they would work towards the final feast, but they would also do a celebration at an equinox or a solstice.